This is the Hyundai, depending on where you're watching this video. In Ireland we call it Hyundai, okay? Soz. It's the Ioniq 5, it's the smaller battery, 58 kilowatt hour, massive comparisons with the Kia EV6, and we'll get to all that in a second. But if you are a naysayer about electric cars, let me say this to you. I'm now going to cut from a seriously expensive camera and lens setup to an iPhone as we go around this car, and tell me, do you still believe that technology doesn't advance time and time again? Because you wouldn't have got that quality from a first generation iPhone back in 2007, that's for sure. This car is capable of super fast charging as long as you can get access to those chargers. Slowly but surely, more slowly though, the ESB are adding at least 100 kilowatt fast chargers, but this car can do over 220 kilowatt charging. It's got an 800 volt capability, so super fast charging, like you're talking 0 to 80% in about 20 minutes if you can find the right charger. And charging that won't be cheap, of course, as well. Under the comparison of this and the EV6, however, in Ireland you can only get an EV6 from €50,000, the Earth model. However, on the Ioniq you can go from very late 30s with not a huge amount of spec, but a decent enough spec, and if you want to get the larger battery you can go right up to early €60,000, and that will catch up with the EV6, there's no doubt about it. In fact, it's more expensive. The front face I still love. This paint colour I really do love. We'll get to that. It's kind of like a flat grey colour. Cheating with the phone here, you've got the executive model, that's the entry one, after grants 37,995, and then you've got an executive plus model, which is this one, and that's just under €41,000 for the smaller 58 kilowatt hour battery and the 170-ish brake horsepower. So it's a good chunk less powerful than the EV6, that has to be said. Under here we have a frunk where you can store your cables and keep them out of the way if you don't want to clog up the boot with that. You can go to 20s if you like. This is on 19s, still look good, better ride quality. Actually probably a little bit less harsh than the EV6, but I was driving that on bigger alloys, to be fair. Big huge crease along the side of the doors. Last model I had for this was the white one, and I think this is a better colour. Now, this reminds me, blind spot included, €41,000. So natural comparisons to this in an ID4 as well. ID4 has got a deeper boot if you need taller space for it, but this has got other things like a few more extras as standard, the faster charging. Unlike the EV6, there's actually a marker on the charging door to tell you where it opens from, and in here is where you charge your CCS or your standard DC charging. And interestingly, this car has a 11 kilowatt charger on board. So if you can get access to three-phase charging, while it won't do the 22 kilowatt charging from the charger, it will do 11. And that's quite a jump over your standard almost 7 on a wall box, or 7.2, whatever it is. It makes a good difference to the charging. And look around, because there's places in Ireland, not many of them, but some, where you can charge for free, like a shopping centre I was in the other day. And you can just charge away there at 11 kilowatts, a couple of hours, get from 70 to 100. I don't know if you spend 2 hours in a shopping centre, but the option is there. I still haven't fallen out of love with this. In fact, I love it. I love that big striking feature, brake lights, daytime running lights. No wiper. The difference between this video and the previous one was I had the car for 24 hours. I've lived it for a week now, and the fact that there's no wiper, it's a little bit annoying, because that's dirty now and I can't wipe it. Sometimes the rain does gather and you can't wipe it. Just stick a wiper on it, Hyundai. The generous legroom in the back of this car, not to mention the head heights, because people are asking about that in comparison with the EV6 as well. The sloping line of the EV6 does cramp down a little bit into your headspace. But anyway, the boot in this is 540 litres. Kind of annoys me that the handle is down there, because it's just dirty and you feel like your hands are dirty. So 540, very comparable to the ID4. As I said, it's just the way the glass boot comes down. It's not quite as big. Under here then you have space for cables. There's a tire mobility kit if you would rather keep your cables down here. And yeah, some comments I've had on the other video, just that the boot isn't quite big enough. I don't know, you know, the length of the car, it's not far off 4 meters. People were possibly expecting a bigger boot, but 540, I think by today's standards, is still very, very good for what is still a hatchback. In here really is very, very generous. You can adjust the angle of the back seat as well with a handle here, so you can tilt it more forward if you want, or give yourself more of a recline. I mean, the room for your legs is vast. You've got 2 USB chargers. Head height, there is loads of extra space there, so even the biggest of adults, they shouldn't feel cramped in the back of this car whatsoever. And 2 child seats, absolute doddle. In the front there is absolutely dark mode. In fact, one of the first things I changed when I collected the car during the week, turned off the really bright white screens, but obviously if you prefer that, you can. One of the interesting things is, and it's the same for every EV, so it's 9 degrees outside. It's not freezing, but it's cold enough. At 37% battery range, I have 107 kilometers. Now that would decrease more if I jumped onto a motorway straight away now, and it might actually increase if I was going down hills or just taking it ever so slightly easier. But you do kind of look at this 58 kilowatt hour battery, 37%, it's only 100 kilometers. What's the story with that? And people panic over it, and it will adjust your driving style and it will increase in summer months. In fact, a neighbour of mine has pretty much this exact car in that kind of silvery gold paint that you can get in the Ioniq 5. He was too shy to come on camera today, unfortunately, but he's got the larger battery and he loves the car. Extremely solid on motorways. Went from a 530e into this. Doesn't necessarily feel the interior is any less of good quality compared to BMW, which is another interesting one. His main issue is, once you hit motorway speeds, and not that anyone would of course, but if you're ever going slightly over the speed limit, the range drastically decreases. And he's had a couple of broken chargers, and he's had a couple of Ionity chargers, which are very, very successful, but he's had a few moments where he's got back to Dublin with 40 kilometres. And it's a fact, if you're driving an EV, there is a bit more planning involved, but in terms of the car's story, it hasn't let him down. On to the EV6 comparisons again, just for a second. In the EV6, this screen here doubles up as access to your media and all those things. And in the Ioniq 5, there's permanent buttons to those things. But there's one glaringly obvious thing that's missing. If you want to use your heated seats, you have to go to this screen and you have to swipe to heated mode. In fact, let me pull out the iPhone again to just demonstrate to you how good technology has come. I might bang this drum a bit. So there we go. You can now see what I can see through the lens of the iPhone, which is fine. So you have your heated steering wheel, you have your heated driver or passenger seats, and you have to go through a screen to turn them on. Now, unless I'm missing something and I can't manage to do it, but I've tried everything, including using the voice activation.
Say a command.
Heated seats, please.
Sorry, please repeat your last command.
Okay, so that doesn't work very well. But anyway, it would be nice to have shortcuts to the aforementioned heated steel steering wheel and seats just here. It would make life an awful lot easier. Anyway, I nearly forgot about the glove box drawer that you get in the car. Very, very practical. You can turn on your rear view camera as you're sitting in the car, and it will project rearwards as you're driving. There's loads of space down here. Like, I got lunch earlier and I shoved the entire bag underneath the armrest. And of course, this whole centre column thing is fully adjustable back and forward. That's something that the EV6 doesn't do. Also, much like the EV6, you can't preheat the car in the mornings unless you have the app, which I don't because I'm not an owner of the car. So if you want to time that, you've got to do it in the app. And you can also time when the car starts to charge. You want to take advantage of cheaper tariffs and stuff like that. And you have the Regen 1 pedal paddles here, so they will also make driving the car without using the brake very often very, very achievable. There's loads of room for cup holders, and just the storage is really, really great. And much like the back, the leg room is quite decent up front. It's actually probably more generous in the back of the car though, which is kind of weird. I don't know if the interior is as slick as the EV6, if I'm being fully honest with you. There's a bit more hard plastic that's obvious. They do come from essentially the same brand and the same factory, so it is kind of weird. If you like the more functional, Apart from the heated seats part, this could be the car for you. And if you like flash and purple lights and it feels like a bit of a nightclub at night time, then the EV6. But again, do you like nightclubs? Because it will cost you €10,000 to get into this EV6 one over this Ioniq 5 one. And it could be regulars only as well. So look, there's something to think about. But I do think the interior is possibly slightly better inside the EV6. I'm sorry. But it's still very good quality. As you can see from the seats and everything, it's all well put together. There is not a single rattle out of this car, and it has almost 10,000 kilometers. We have a little stalk underneath the steering wheel for selecting reverse and forward. Good visibility all around. Not getting the same, obviously again, spec-wise, I'm not getting the same overview camera as I did on the EV6, but you know, you can upgrade all these things. And as I said, if you want to get a super fast, dual motored, €64,000 option, you'd be mad, but you can. Now, I know I've made the point that the faster chargers aren't 10 a penny around Ireland. They really aren't. But if the car, as the Ioniq 5 can, if the car you're looking at buying can charge really, really quickly, then it does mean you can, in theory, go for the smaller battery and save yourself a significant amount. Get a smaller battery and get a better spec car. The dilemma always is, do I not get the better spec car and get the bigger battery? Because, well, one, you mightn't have had an EV before and you might be stressing over range. And the thing I'd definitely really say to you is, if you do a huge amount of city driving and you're not often, you know, miles away from from chargers, and you have the option of charging from home, I personally would go for the better spec over the smaller battery. But that's just me. And I get the whole range thing and I get the panicking about it, but trust me, if you don't do that kind of driving, you'd rather be looking at the nice extras you got. It's just a fact. And you don't have to go mad, because as I said, this is 41,000 and you still get blind spot and you get cameras. And you know, there's decent things that, for example, at that price in an Audi Q4 e-tron, you're not going to get. If you want to watch a review of that car, because price-wise it's comparable, you can watch that review up here. In fact, I'll leave as many links as I can at the end of this video to all the other electric cars in the same category of model. Cyber Grey is the colour we have going on in this car. It is rear-wheel drive, in case you're not familiar with that. It can make you a little bit edgy again if you don't have experience of rear-wheel drive or EVs. Yes, there's a lot of torque. If you're on mucky, wet road conditions, it's just something to bear in mind when you're planting your foot on the floor. I think this car, though, still feels like it has enough power, and it's a significant way off 200 brake horsepower. Rear-wheel drive, though, that instant electric torque, it adds to, I genuinely mean, you know, an absolutely satisfactory response in terms of acceleration. So much so, in fact, that this car, as it approaches 10,000 kilometers, if you do plant your foot, you'll get a little bit of wheel slip, because the tires are obviously having to cope with a lot of torque going to the rear of the car and pushing it forward. I like the fact there's an awful lot of safety stuff as standard on this car as well. You have your frontal collision. That'll give you a heads up and a loud beep if it thinks you're going to hit something in front and you're not being alert enough. In terms of consumption, well, in colder weather and shorter journeys, it's not amazing. Over the almost 10,000 kilometers, this car has achieved 19.3 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. Now, I was going to go through and get that into a metric comparison for you, but I've given up, because whatever display settings is in there to do it. Look, it's well over 3 miles per. Oh, I don't know. England, the UK, could you not just join up with the rest of us for everything? Life would be so much easier. I think even you guys know that by now. There is a snow mode, speaking of grip, that you hold down the drive mode, and that will just help you navigate slippier conditions. There's an eco mode, a normal mode, and a sport mode. Everything goes red. You feel a bit more urgency in the car, all right. As you can hear there, that's a lane departure warning. It drives me absolutely mad, because when it comes on, if you're listening to tunes, it mutes the tunes every single time. Now, it does its job really well. You know, I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's just quite loud and quite intrusive. Handling wise, I think it's all right. I've had a couple of quick blasts in this car. You do feel the weight of it. give me an electric car of this price where you don't feel the weight of it. You know, you got to get into e-tron GTs and Porsches to really be able to have something that is so low down and doesn't sometimes throw its weight around. And the level of regen on the paddles, if you do want to use this car with iPedal, just lift your foot off and it brings the car to a total stop. And it means once you get used to it, you're never using the brake pedal unless it's a total emergency. It still works and all, relax, but yeah, the iPedal is really, really good. And it will beep to tell you when the car in front's driving on. So actually I could stay here looking at you and not even worry about the cars in front, because the car will tell me when everyone else has moved on. It's a clever little feature. In summary though, in terms of performance, I actually think the 170 brake horsepower version is fine. And I can't believe I'm saying that. And I wouldn't say it if I genuinely... There's enough power for overtaking. There's enough power for normal driving. You get a gap in the traffic, you're out the gap. And if you want to go spending more on dual motors and bigger batteries, knock yourself out. But me, I think I'll sit here in the 58 kilowatt hour, get myself an Executive Plus or a Premium, and feel happy with all the extra toys that I have. And if I need to pull over for a charge, at least I know the Ioniq 5 will do it very, very fast. To wrap it up today, the Ioniq 5 is one of the best electric cars you can buy in the market right now, anywhere in Ireland, the UK, Europe. There is a big difference between the price of this and the EV6. Equally, for the same money, into an ID4, there might be more tech and certainly faster charging on this. But the big question, certainly at the moment, is getting access to that type of charging speed in Ireland. Very, very rare you're going to find it. I mean, how many Ionity charging stations are there even here? It's more radical looking than a lot of electric cars. Some of you will love that, some of you may not be so sure. And I think if you were looking for a family-sized EV for 2022, it has to be on your shortlist. You can't rule it out. Even forget anything you've ever thought about Hyundai before if you were kind of maybe not sure. Because I could live with this very easily. The main thing, again, like all electric cars, is be very, very sure if you can survive with a smaller battery. Because if you can't, and you're doing distances and motorways quite regularly, you will find yourself charging quite a lot. But as a solid EV that will get you over the next few years, absolutely. Thank you very much for watching.